And that leads me into our Minute Masterclass Corner, which Dino hasn't gone through yet, although he's been on the show a few times already. So this is a new segment where we try to parse fast learnings and fast insights for our listeners out there. And in particular, you talked about your chief science officer. You talked about your chief like data scientist as well, as being some of the best in the world. And obviously, you talked about how the pandemic with the work from anywhere contributing to that accessibility to this talent. Would love for you to also share with us like what has been a key learning in actually convincing them to join the ship, right? Like with this talent from all over the world, like why would they choose to like focus on a business that's working in Indonesia specifically with MSMEs specifically and doing lending specifically, right?
One of the interesting realizations is it's actually not about the money. I mean these are extremely expensive talent, right? But certainly talent that we probably wouldn't have been able to afford unless there was that X factor. And the X factor, I guess, with a lot of technical talent that we've been able to attract is that this is something interesting they want to work on. So my chief science officer, super experienced data scientist, I was actually curious, right? Because the competing job offer she had was mind-blowing. I mean, I won't reveal it, but it's a huge US corporate, leadership position there. And I chased her for 3 years, right? So when she finally accepted, I was super, super grateful. But I also asked, so why did you join us? And she said that, look, I really enjoy creating new science. And she felt that our data set was unique in this world. And I said, really? Unique? And she said, don't get me wrong. There's a mountain of data on, customer purchasing patterns, right? Be it from e-commerce companies or even supermarkets, right? All of this data is readily available. Even on supply chain data, a lot of that sits within the big principals. But principals tend to have that data more just for their brands. Right. So what she said was that, well, AwanTunai is collecting a whole range of supply chain purchase transaction data at scale. And she says that, especially in the traditional segment, right? Traditional is non-supermarkets, modern convenience stores. In this traditional segment, which is actually for a lot of emerging markets, the majority of the supply chain, right? In Indonesia, it's 80% of the supply chain. She mentioned that this data it's not visible at scale. Like she's seen a few kind of data science papers that has collected this data, but it was more through, focus group discussions in Africa. Whereas with our infrastructure, our ERPs in place in all these middle layer kind of suppliers, we're collecting it at scale. And she feels that this is new data sets where new technologies and science can be developed. And that's what gets her excited. So right, it's not about the money, right? It has to be something that's really interesting for top talent to work on.
Right. And you did mention a small detail there, which I wanted to zoom in on, is the fact that you chased her for 3 years. I wanted to know, like, what did you change, I guess, in your pitch, or maybe because apparently it was the problem and sort of the nature of the problem that actually attracted her, right? Is it how you framed the problem, or like what she saw, or what you gave her?
Well, for her, it was really our data set. So when we first chased her, this was back in 2018, I think.
Right.
Again, we were only sourcing publicly available data. We would purchase telco data or start to scrape everything you can imagine off that smartphone. So it's data that everyone else also has, right? There's nothing truly proprietary about it. But once, we made that transition into the traditional supply chain with like the start or the beginnings of an ERP system, that's when the data collection became very interesting for her, or the data sets became very interesting for her.
And so if you were to give a class on this to some, fellow founders out there, or folks who are CEOs or leaders trying to hire this like top class talent, what would be the key takeaway for this class for them? Is it to chase them for 3 years, or?
Well, no, I mean, look, people always talk about passion, right? And different folks have different passions. Again, I mentioned in business, sometimes there is luck. And I just caught her at just the right time of her career. She was sick and tired of US corporate politics and all that. I mean, she's been a CTO of large organizations, right? 200 engineers plus. So again, sometimes the stars just need to align. But if I was giving, a lecture, I would call it building technology for the tech illiterate. And I think that has a real interesting hook point for a lot of folks, because what I see as a real barrier of adoption out there to tech adoption is this kind of a well-beaten path that, all right, we're gonna get some lady in a village to download an app on a smartphone and make the magic work. I mean, that's great on paper, right, on a pitch deck, but hitting that user adoption, especially when the user tech illiterate or they don't even have a phone, is an entirely, that I think is some very challenging problems that is exciting to solve.